Before we start doing anything at all with color and metals, it's important to understand that while there's a whole unlimited range of metallic color possibilities, they all originate from three basic pigments: gray, yellow, and red, corresponding to silver, as well as aluminum or nickel, gold, and copper. By combining these pure metals in different ratios, a wide spectrum of alloy colors can be achieved. In a sense, this gives us a new metal color wheel, or rather a color triangle to work with. For example, combining copper and zinc creates brass, which has a yellowish hue. Copper and tin produce bronze with its signature brownish tint. White gold is an alloy of gold with white metals like silver, nickel, or palladium. So while pure elemental metals have distinct colors, the world of metal alloys opens up an extensive color palette based on those fundamental silver, gold, and copper tones. Understanding this allows us to mix colored pencils to accurately depict realistic metal hues and add luster to our artwork. This is our most ambitious and advanced program in the Academy yet, and we have some pretty impressive courses out there already. This one features over 80 video lessons across 6 information-packed chapters. But don't let the word advanced intimidate you. I've designed every single lesson to be approachable and easy to follow. Remembering our metals color triangle, where does this fit on that spectrum? Is it closer to yellow? Is it closer to gray? Is it closer to red? I see no red in this metal at all. I see a little bit of a reflection of a floor that's probably made out of reddish wood, but the metal itself is clearly yellow, yet not as pure yellow as our pure gold was. This is probably brass. If I was to guess, this is something very common that we can see in households, that we can see in doorknobs and other such decorations. Keys and key locks we see made in similar metals. What makes this stand out is that it's obviously darker than gold. So the color is actually quite similar. It's very yellow with a little bit of gray in it. But mostly I would put this on the yellow corner of our triangle. However, it is significantly darker, but still just as shiny. And I know that right now in the beginning, all of this seems very overwhelming, which is why it's particularly important to take it one step at a time and practice along with me as we advance through this course. When I look at this sphere on the left and I kind of blur my eyes, the main color that stands out to me is kind of a muted mid-tone brown. Remember that every time we copy a visual effect, what we're really doing is copying an illusion. It's not the actual natural color of the object. It's whatever color it presents itself to us. The same way as when we look at a human face in a particular light, that shadow under the chin may look perfectly blue. It doesn't mean that that person has blue skin. It just means that in that lighting, in that setting, the shadow looks bluish or purplish. And that means that that's the color we have to pull out and match. Same thing here. Metals are particularly complicated because of all the reflections that we get here, and not just light reflections, but object reflections as well. Objects have colors. The shinier and the better polished the metal, the cleaner the reflections, and reflections come with colors. So all that has to be considered. What I'm seeing here on this sample on the left is that there are windows and there's a floor. That main light source is actually the sun, and we can see it shining through a window. That brownish color on the bottom part of our sphere is probably the floor. Our living quarters are all very similar. Everyone lives in the same universe where we have floors and walls and windows. So wherever this sphere is, probably it's safe to bet that it's reflecting a floor, some walls, some windows, and possibly some furniture. If it's actually in the house. If it's outdoors, then we'll probably see some blue reflecting from the sky, green reflected from the plants, etc. To me, this is clearly an indoor sphere, and in fact, all of these are. And actually, quite a few of them are located in the same exact position, in the same exact room. So we will see a lot of these light reflections repeating over and over again on every single sphere. My second color layer here is yellow ochre. We've already used yellow ochre. We know we can trust it. We know we love it. We know what it looks like and how it layers. Did I say that it's safer to start with lighter colors in general? And did I totally do the exact opposite on this sphere? Yes, I did. In this case, there is just so much more of that dark primer that it made more sense for me to start with it. If you're not confident enough with your shading skills, go ahead and start with your yellow ochre and then start adding the browns. Honestly, it doesn't matter. It just comes down to how good of a shader you are, how confident of a shader you are, and also what helps you establish the most information on your drawing. I'm going to refer to every single one of these things as drawings because you know what? Without your work that you're doing on it with your colored pencils, it's just a circle. It's not an object. It's not metal. It's not reflective. It's just a circle. All the work that you're putting in is actually drawing. It is so much more than coloring. You are actually drawing a metallic object, a metallic sphere. And you can see that, hypocrisy aside, the principle here is still the same. Light, dark, light, dark. But even though I started with brown and continued with yellow, that first brown was my lightest brown. So always I am building up my layers. Layers, layers, layers. Layers are the key to metallic effects. And on the note of layers, let's talk a little bit about pressure and pencil pigment application. Because we're adding so many layers to every single one of these metal samples, it's important to use very light pressure, but an obscene amount of pencil strokes. We want to be shading like crazy. Shade, 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 but with the same amount of pressure so that we're never grinding into the page. And don't be afraid of making crazy decisions like this one. I am now coming in with green. Is green anywhere on my metallic triangle? No, it is not. It is not. It is not one of the natural metallic colors, though we do often see greenish tints in our metals, and usually that happens due to oxidation or moss, believe it or not, actual plant life. That is not the case here with this brass. Here, the greenish is simply an optical illusion. If you fear using an actual green pencil on this sphere, don't do it. Use a combination of yellow and gray instead. My green just happened to be perfect for the effect that I'm going for. But again, notice how lightly I am adding it. Very gentle strokes. This is more like airbrushing than actually coloring. Very, very gentle. Now, a lot of the questions that I get on shading techniques is, well, if you don't want us to blemish the page, if you don't want us to grind into the surface of the page, then how can we ever get the really smooth effects where all the strokes just seamless? Well, that also happens with layers, and especially with oil-based pencils. No extra pressure is necessary for that blending in the end. And you will see once we complete this chart that some of our metallic effects are going to be borderline hyper-realistic. That's how smooth the shading on them is. So don't think that you have to actually use force and use pressure to create really smooth effects. They will happen naturally as you add more and more layers. And especially if you're working with a professional brand of pencils like Prismacolor, and especially if you're able to go back and forth between light and dark tones. That going back and forth between light and dark is exactly what's going to smooth out your colors. And always with those eyes going left and right, left and right. The yellow here seems a little bit sharp to me, a little bit acidic even. So I'm bringing in a yellow chartreuse. What if you don't have a yellow chartreuse in your pencil box? Worry not. Any other light yellow will do the job. And if you need to balance it and make it a little bit less cheerful than the yellow in the sample above, try bringing in a light gray to tone it down. Your pencils are your own. Only you know your ability to blend with them. So this is all going to be very personal and very specific, not just to your tools, but also to your shading style. And if you're brand new to this hobby entirely and you're just getting your feet wet, you're just getting used to all of this, then you may not know your style yet, in which case it's even more essential that you practice. I would rather you practice a lot and mess things up over and over again and have that black be too dark and have that yellow be too bright than not try enough things. Try and see what works and what doesn't. We can't possibly know what doesn't work if we don't run into complications, if we don't make mistakes, if we don't make things ugly. At some point, my drawings were ugly, but with practice and time, they smoothed out. You can't expect perfection out of the blue. We have to stumble and fall to learn to keep our balance. You can't ride a bike if you don't fall off of it a couple of times first. Same thing here. And always those eyes go back and forth. On that black segment that I just completed, if you've done how to use colored pencils like a pro, please revisit the lessons on tints, tones, and shades, and specifically that shade practice sheet. It is essential with metals to know how to use black to create different shades of colors. If you're not comfortable using your black pencil yet, by the end of this course, you will be. And always go back and forth with your colors, light and dark, dark and light, and constantly make those tiny adjustments. If I see that a little bit of brown is missing from what I see on the left, then I come in with more brown. If I feel like the contrast isn't strong enough, I come in with more black. Tiny, gentle adjustments. Think airbrushing. Just add a little bit more of whatever color you're working with, just a little bit more until the result looks like something that actually makes you happy.